The first act is called The Pledge. I show you something ordinary like the sphere, and then comes the turn. I make the sphere do something extraordinary, which is the premise of this tutorial. We're going to take the sphere, we're going to cut it over and over and over again, and then finally, the prestige. I show you how the thing was. Is that a good intro, or is that the stupidest thing you've ever heard? Either way, yes, today we are making spheres split, and I'll give you a hint for how this is done in the prestige. Not done with loops, because Geometry Node still doesn't have them, but because of that, I'm just going to show you how to take a sphere and split it 2 times, how to make the materials, and it's all procedural with Geometry Nodes. Does that sound fun? It's fun. Okay, let's do it. Take the cube, geometry nodes. Take the geometry nodes, make them geometry nodish, and get rid of the cube. What we want to do is we want to take a sphere and cut it in half and somehow have both pieces roll, and as they roll, they become half the size. So that's a lot. Let's take it step by step. First, we need a sphere. Why? Because we're making a sphere cut in half. Of course, we need a sphere. Next order of business is we want to take this sphere and cut it in half. How do we do that procedurally with geometry nodes? Well, we could do a mesh boolean, right? So we could take a cube, say anything not in this cube or intersecting with this cube, whichever one you prefer, keep or throw away. Okay? So, mesh boolean. I feel very weird having done that intro. I feel like I showed you something I shouldn't have, but whatever. So we're going to mesh boolean with a cube, and if we look at the cube, you're going to see it's a bit too small, so we need to make it 2 by 2 by 2, which makes sense because the sphere has a radius, in other words, half the diameter of 1, so it has to be 2. And connected to the difference, boom. Well, not boom. They're perfectly overlapping, so I need to take the cube, shift it over by a unit, and boom, there we go, half a sphere. So again, so far, we have a sphere. We took a cube and offset it and said anything inside this cube, get rid of. So that's a slice in half. Next order of business is let's also bring this up. So I'm just going to bring this up on the z-axis. Next order of business is we want, and by the way, everything we do is just going to be for this piece. We're going to make it roll over here. And then at the end, I'm going to take care of the second piece that isn't here yet. What do we want to do? We want to make this thing turn. If you've seen my last couple tutorials, you'll know I talked in depth about how to make any object, including half a sphere, roll, but I'll go over it for you. So the first thing is we need to pick a pivot point, like right here, so that this orbits around the pivot point, and this is going to create a problem, and we'll talk about what that is. But first, let's do that. So set position. Anytime we want to like change the position of the thing, and by the way, if you're thinking, oh, why don't you just do a rotation? This is what happens when you rotate. Or let me do it on the... Oh, that's a scale. That's the issue. You can see it's rotating based on the origin. We don't want that. So that's why we're doing set position. We want to rotate it based off a custom pivot point. So for the position, we first have the position, so nothing's changing. And I want to rotate this thing. So take a vector rotate. We're going to take the position vectors and say, do a thing to them. First of all, I want to rotate based on the y-axis. So instead of z, rotate on the y such that now it's doing the same thing. Before it was doing this. So we want it to be on the y-axis. And second of all, I want the origin to be off to the side. So I'm going to say like an x value of like, I don't know, 1. The reason I pick 1 is it's actually going to make the math easier later on. So either way, when this is 0, we're at our initial state, and as we increase to 90, boom, it gets to our final rotated state. So let's make a little animation for that. And I know the thing is going to float. We'll take care of it. So on frame 0, we have 0 degrees, I for keyframe, 30 frames later, 90. Boom. So we have a rotation. To make it look better, first of all, let's add some interpolation. Hit T, back, and back makes it kind of it overextends and then it wobbles back. And you can see it kind of looks like the sphere is cut in half and it explodes away and then it kind of rolls. Issue being, it's floating. Here, it's floating even at the end. Actually, at the end, it kind of goes under the floor axis. We have a lot to fix. Let me get rid of this annotation so it doesn't bother me later. So this is the thing I was talking about with rolling that I explained in a previous tutorial. To make something roll, you first do the rotation like I showed you. And then we're going to do a trick where we're going to have it be pinned down to the floor on every frame. And those two things together make it look like an object is rolling. So again, anytime we want to change the position, we do another set position. This time, I want to look at the object in any frame. So let's say frame 7. And I want to say, look at this mesh and tell me what the lowest point of it is. In this case, it's here. And then we say, take that lowest point and bring it over here. Also, on this frame, we take the lowest point and bring it upwards. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. To calculate the lowest point, attribute statistic, I want the statistic of not the position, but the z coordinate, the height of the thing. So take the z coordinate, referencing the geometry. So first we rotate. Now we're going to reference it. We're going to look at the z coordinate. Tell me what the minimum is and bring it down by that much. In other words, take the minimum height and inverse it, bring it down, make it a negative. So we're going to multiply it by -1. So if it's like has a height, the minimum point has a height of like 1 meter, it's going to turn to -1 and bring everything downwards. And if it's negative, vice versa. We have this, and then we want that to affect the z coordinate. Boom, take this, connect it to the offset, and look at that. Magically, we've made an object roll. So that's the premise of a tutorial I showed before. I went more in depth on that. But look at that. Now we have half a sphere rolling. I also wanted to get half as small because it's going to turn into spheres that turn into spheres. And because all of this is fully procedural, so procedural that we should save it, I'm going to call it available on Patreon, link in the description. Because this is completely procedural, if we want to scale it down and still have it like rotate on the floor as it's shrinking, this is a thing we can do. All we need to do is do the scaling. So I'm going to do a vector math. Scaling you can think of as scale, whereas rotating you can think of as vector rotate. Scaling is scale. Yeah, all these things make sense. And addition is a translation. You take the scale. This is going to be the size of it relative to the origin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keyframe with I, and then on the last frame, I'm going to make it half the size. So let's see what that looks like. So you can see it's rotating, or it's rolling, and it's shrinking down, and it's staying on the floor, which is this is why the technique is so powerful. You can literally have a object morph and still roll on the ground. Either way, I feel like I talked about this enough. So we have the thing split in half, but now we have to do all this node network stuff for the other side. No, we don't. No. We've done all this for one side. Why don't we just take it, transform it, join it, and rotate it by 180 degrees? So I've taken this. Let me be more explicit. I've taken this and just said pivot it over, reflect it about the z-axis, and now we have two of them perfectly. So that's why we only had to make one. This is basically a mirror modifier. And then finally, I want these halves to each form their own sphere, which kind of sounds complicated. How do we like add sphere? Well, remember all of this was dependent on a mesh boolean from the beginning. Remember this cube that creates this thing? Well, we can kind of reform the sphere, and then the rolling has already happened. So, boop, reforms. So it all kind of just works out. So I'm going to keyframe, let it go for 15 frames, half the time of the rolling animation, and have it reform -2. So look at that. We have one sphere turn into two. That's a cool trick. And now if you want to take, I know that was loud. Now if you want to take this and repeat it, normally if you were programming this, you'd use like a loop so that we don't have to add more nodes. But because geometry nodes does not have looping yet, I'll show you a trick that, whatever, it works. So I'm going to take this. Remember, all of this is just it's a cube with geometry nodes. I'm going to take this, duplicate it, and actually duplicate it so that it's centered in the middle. So now we have two of these. What I want to do is for the second version, and I know my face is above it, but I have two objects. For the second one, I'm going to make its own geometry nodes thing, so they're not linked. So if I was to delete a node here, that's not necessarily the case with the other one, right? Of course, I don't want to delete it, but I unlink them. The reason I did that is I want to take all the keyframes and shift them over. So now I'm making one version of geometry nodes that starts at frame 0 and one that starts at frame 45, as you can see. And the idea is, since we made a copy, I'm going to take this, I'm going to scale it by 1/2, I'm going to move it by 1.5 on the x-axis, and now you can see boom. It almost looks like it continued where it left off. And because this is an object, I can just rotate it by 90 degrees, and then the animation will happen in the other axis. And then you can repeat this over and over and over again. Well, to make it like appear and disappear so that there isn't a sphere here already, and we have to do this on both, you could either hide geometry, or if you want to do it in geometry nodes, simply, you could use delete geometry, and then use a value node as the controller. So when it's set to 1, it's going to delete the geometry, and when it's set to 0, it's going to keep it. So on frame 45, we want to keep it. This is, again, the second sphere, and then the frame before, delete. On the other hand, for the original one, the thing that we did all the work on, I'm also going to add a delete geometry. Again, we unlinked the geometry node, so everything we do to one doesn't necessarily happen to the other. This should be active, and then on the next frame, it should be deleted. So, and we need to make another copy, but so it looks like the sphere is split, and then the sphere is split, whereas really we're just transitioning. And to make the second one, you just take it, you duplicate it, and then you move it on the x-axis by -3, since I moved it by 1.5. And boom. Now, the way I did this for the rest of it is I then repeated this, which is why I'm not going to do it in this tutorial, but you get the idea. So next time I do 4, and then 8, and then, you keep multiplying by 2. Right? Yeah, you keep multiplying by 2. That's literally what this is splitting. But you can do that yourself. One other thing I want to go over is the material. So I'm going to make a material here. I'm assigning the material to, again, both of these, because these are sharing the same group. And if I go earlier to the previous one, which has a different geonodes, I also have to set material here. So all of these now have the same material, even though they're different geonode groups. And let me tell you how I made the material. It's super simple. Nothing crazy. What I said is I want it to glow, so I increased the emission. I said I don't want it to glow everywhere, only on the rim, so I did a Fresnel, which does exactly that. It shows the outline of the thing. So I made this emissive only on the Fresnel, but I want each one to be a different color, and that's a lot of work. No, it's not. It's not a lot of work. Just take geometry, look at the position, and naturally you could see that because they go to different areas, they're going to take different position vectors, which looks like they're different colors. Either way, make this the emissive color. What does this look like? It looks like a bunch of spheres with outlines for their respective thing. And, I brushed it up a little, made it look better. Let me show you the original again. I put a reflective plane and made him glow a little, but, same difference, and then I had him animate back. But that's the essence of it, so let's wrap this boy up. How long did we go? 13 minutes. What is this? All 3 parts of The Godfather? I don't know. Are there 2, 3? I haven't seen them. Either way, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. And as always, at the end of these, I like to pimp the ever-living. Don't say the word. It gets you demonetized. But the test out of Patreon. So Patreon, there's a link in the description. There are 4 reasons why you should join Patreon. First of all, you get early access to tutorials. You could have seen this video significantly early. I think this one not even a day early, more like 3 or 4 days early. So you could watch videos way before they come out for $1. So that's just a thing. The second tier, the one that I think is the coolest or the most useful for the price, is $5. That is the blend file, so you can get the final blend file for the one that I split like 4 times and you can get the blend file, the original one, and every blend file I've uploaded since 2019. That is hundreds of blend files for $5. So it's a good deal, and all of them have tutorials. And then the third tier, the highest tier, for $15, you get access to exclusive tutorials. Those are tutorials that I have not made available for free on YouTube, but most of them are for free on YouTube. So I made one the other day about advanced geometry node stuff. You can check it out. But the best way to support this channel and CG Matter, or Default Cube, I don't know which channel I'm posting this on, and keep all of this available for free for everybody forever, is to donate to Patreon. That's the way that I can do it. Either way, thank you to all the active patrons. Thank you for everybody considering it. And thank you for watching this tutorial. That's my time. Bye-bye.